we've been in a series called We Over Me for a little while now. How many of y'all enjoyed last week? Tim Nisley. Tim's in the back. Everyone give it up for Tim. Bringing the word last week. It was so good. And we're going to continue our series, but I'm not going to take very much time at all. In fact, I want you guys to hear from these guys and their experience with friendships, relationships, community, and their lives. And for so many of them, they've walked through so many seasons, and honestly, they've walked through the same seasons that you guys are walking through right now. And so I really want to encourage you guys really to lean in to what they have to say. And honestly, I've already heard partial parts of the responses, and it's really, really good. And so I would really encourage you guys, take out your notes. Y'all bring your notepad? Cool. If you didn't bring your notepad, then just wave your phone around, and if you don't take any notes, that's cool too. But we're going to start off with a question, and I have some questions I'm going to ask them, and you guys can write them down if you want to follow along and take some notes. But the first question is for everyone. Do you guys have a microphone? Okay, cool, awesome. Is it just one microphone or two? Nice, Cooper's got the other one. The first question, and Katie, you can kick us off if you want. Everyone's going to answer this question, but when did relationships become a priority for you?
So this isn't super spiritual, but I remember I was 8 years old and I had just graduated to the 8 and 9-year-old Sunday school class. I know that sounds spiritual, but it really wasn't. There were just no other girls in that class, so I really wanted a friend. So this little girl came to church one Sunday and someone said, "Oh, she's 8," and so I said, "I'm gonna go meet her." And she was a perfect stranger, but I went up and met her and invited her to Sunday school. So I needed a friend.
That's amazing. That's so great. Cooper, you want to kick it off?
Sweet. Okay, so I would say for me, it probably happened when I was about 16. I was one of those guys that had super strict parents. So when I got a car, I was like, I'm out of here. And then, I definitely found out what a curfew was a couple weeks later. But yeah, that's probably much for me.
Awesome. Kate?
Okay. Well, two things. First of all, I'm extremely nervous. And second of all, I'm going to read my notes. So don't be alarmed if I'm reading from my notes.
Everyone
okay.
give it up for Kate.
Okay.
Give it up for Kate. Come on.
That doesn't help. That makes it worse. Okay. All right. So this one was actually kind of tough for me to answer because Kyle and I talked about it, and through a little mental inventory later in life, I then realized how just important friendships and relationships were, because in the moment, I didn't treat them as good as I should have. I didn't talk to people about the things that I was going through. When I was in high school, I had a tendency to isolate myself, even though things were going on, and I knew, I should probably tell somebody about this. I isolated myself. I didn't talk to people. I went to college. I opened up a little bit, but nobody knew about the anxiety and the questions and the things that were still going on. It wasn't until I truly, truly got honest with myself about what was going on and the things that I was feeling and thinking, and then I could be honest to other people. That's when true intimate relationships started happening in friendships. So yeah.
That's really good. That's really good. Sam, do you have the microphone now? Now you do.
So I think for me, community really became important in college. I had a fair amount of friends in high school and some really good ones that I'm actually friends with today, but I didn't really become intentional until I was in college.
I'm going to scoot up here. I feel like I'm totally out of the picture. That's better. All right, Brittany.
What's up, you guys? I think relationships became important to me from a younger age, like elementary school, but mainly because of my parents. So my mom was one of those moms, your little friends, I don't like this girl and I don't like that girl. And it was weird, but she was just teaching me different traits or characteristics to look at in people that were toxic versus a healthy relationship. The friend that will go and play with you, but then 3 seconds later go and gossip to other girls about you. My mom was she's not your friend, she's not your friend. I'm okay, thanks, Mom. So I think that's when relationships became important to me.
I'm kind of loud. I guess it's the same as Kate. I don't really have a specific day or time, but I remember, when I was younger, I thought I had a lot of friends or acquaintances, I should say. I played sports, I was involved at school, but the truth was I didn't really have any intimate friendships, and this is I feel really lame saying this now, but it's a true story, so I have to be honest. Probably my best friend was my mother until I was around 18, 19 years old, and that sounds weird. But later in life, now that I'm older and I can reflect, it's 100% God knew what I needed. Because just quick tidbit, you know, you've heard it before, but you are really what you surround yourself by. And my mother was the only one that I truly I let her influences affect my heart. I let her in. I was emotionally vulnerable with my mother. I would play a role at school. I was great at being the chameleon. The facade was thick. Okay, I could do whatever I had to do to navigate certain situations at high school and different parts of the community. But the reality is, probably the only person I trusted with my heart was my mother. And we'll get deeper into some of this stuff later, but it's 100% important that, you guard your heart, definitely.
So I think friendships really became important to me around my junior year because like the first half of when I was in high school, I had gotten myself into like a lot of drama. I was just kind of the worst. And I kind of looked back and I was like, oh, I don't have any friends now. And so that was just kind of when God started like stirring things up in me and like just kind of started fixing me, I guess, from the inside out and just like reminding me of how important friendships are. And I started to value the relationships that I did have.
For sure. No, that's really good. We're going to start off with a couple of more in-depth questions, and they're all going to go through and answer one question a little bit more specifically. But the first question is for Katie. Why do you value community?
Community is definitely something I'm super passionate about. It's something I really highly value. It actually is what brought me to Faith Family. Where I was going, I wasn't able to get super connected. It just wasn't really an option. And I actually started coming to a Connect group here before I ever once came to a service. And months later, found myself here. Because it's really important to me to be connected with people my age, older, younger. I just really value all the ages. And I think that one of the biggest things is community gives you perspective. Sometimes you only see things through your side of things, but when you start seeing other people's viewpoints, all these different people's viewpoints, it just expands your world and gives you a healthier perspective on life. And I really just believe that this is what God designed for us from the very start. He created the heavens and the earth, and we know Genesis 1. And in the beginning, when he put Adam and Eve in the garden, one of the key components was he was in fellowship with them, and he walked with them on a daily basis. And when there was sin, then that fellowship was cut off. And that's why Jesus came, to restore that fellowship with God. And God designed the early church to also be in fellowship with one another and to advance his kingdom. So we see throughout the Bible this whole idea of community and being in fellowship with God and with each other. And so that is why I think the enemy all the time is trying to isolate us. He's trying to make us think that no one understands how you feel. No one understands what you're going through. No one cares. No one could be connected with you. And so we pull back just a little bit. And that's the opposite of what God designed. And it's a little bit risky sometimes to put yourself out there and ask for help, but that's the way he designed us to be. And I have never seen someone pull back from community and be stronger and healthier because of it. But I have seen over and over people get plugged into some community, and that community stretches them, encourages them, they have fun. There's just so many great things about community. An example, for instance, I'm a runner, and when I lived in Canton a couple years ago, this running community that I was part of, they were doing, I kid you not, 5 a.m. hill repeats once a week. And I thought, I thought it did too, but then I was sort of intrigued and I was like, okay, I'll give this a try. We'll see what this is. I don't know, like, it's crazy. Who does this? Who gets up at 5 a.m. to go run up hills? But for some reason, the group was doing it, and so it didn't matter that it was dark. I didn't want to, like, my alarm would go off and be like, oh, I want to sleep, but the group was doing it, and I didn't want to be left out, and I didn't want to miss this opportunity, so I'd get up and I'd go, and it made me a better runner. It made me a stronger runner. I learned lots of things from these other more experienced runners. It was just really good, and it brought me into into their community, and it made me love running even more. And I think that's just what community is. It brings you into something that some other people are doing or experiencing, and it teaches you along the way and challenges you and pushes you to places that you never thought you'd go, and you have a lot of fun along the way. Not every community is perfect, but honestly, I don't want to live life without community. It's something that I'm definitely going to keep fighting for.
Wow, that's really good. Yeah, you can give it up for that response. Go ahead. That was amazing. I loved what you said about perspective and how being in community really does give you different perspective and even gives you different vantage points. Because how many of y'all know we have blind spots? Can we be real? Like, we got things we don't see. We need people around us that'll help illuminate a path of understanding for us to see those things. But that was amazing. Really good. Cooper, my man, Coop, what are some qualities and traits of a good friend?
Right, okay, so this is actually a really good question. When I was in high school, I was really good at picking out what made people really bad. I was really good at being like, hey, this person's a really bad friend because they did this, or this person's toxic for me because they're doing this. And it wasn't so much later where I started to realize and appreciate all the good characteristics that I had in a lot of people around me. And I think to really answer that question, you have to go back and think, what do you need from a friendship? And for me, it was always comfortable transparency. And it's comfortable because sometimes it's not easy to be transparent. Like, of course, it's really easy to tell people what you're thinking, your emotions, what's going on with your life when everything's going great. It's kind of like bragging. It's just super easy to talk about yourself when things are good, but when it's hard, when you're going through hard times, if you're living through like a season of sin or just a season of something that's really difficult, it becomes really uncomfortable to do that. So for me, it was really important to find friends that I could be comfortably transparent with. And I think that required a lot of grace from those people. And that's kind of, like Jesus has grace for everybody. And it's really cool that the thing I required most from friends is something that Jesus has given us. But yeah, so I definitely found that those people that gave me so much grace in my times of need were people that I always ended up coming back to later on. And those are the people that I definitely am still friends with today, and those are the people that I've had lasting relationships with.
That's really good, man. That's really good. I loved how you said comfortable transparency, because you could be transparent with anybody, You could tell anybody anything, but at the end of the day, it's always a lot harder. And so true, man. It's so much harder whenever things aren't going well to be transparent, when things aren't actually going great. And it requires so much humility, but you find so much freedom whenever you find those people you can be comfortably transparent with and know that they're not going to judge you, look at you weird, look at you differently, but truthfully people that you can be comfortably transparent with. That was really good, man. Mackenzie, what are some things to look out for in a toxic friendship, so other side of the spectrum?
So when I was thinking about toxic friendships, I first wanted to get in the Word and see what a good godly friendship is. And so Proverbs 27:9, it says, "A sweet friendship refreshes the soul." And so it got me thinking what is a toxic friendship? And I realized a toxic friendship is really, sorry if I say toxic a lot. A toxic friendship is really just anything that does the opposite of refreshes you. And so I kind of wanted to speak from my experience. I thought of these 3 little points for you guys. So toxic friends will influence you negatively. We always say here, show me your 5 closest friends and I'll show you your future. And we say it a lot, but it's so true. When you just invest your time into people and you are constantly spending time with people, especially your friends, whether you like it or not, or whether you see it happening or not, they will start to rub off on you, and that can be a positive or a negative thing. And for me, like I said earlier, the first couple years of high school, I was just in so much drama and all this stupid stuff. And I gossiped a lot, and I noticed the people around me, once I started, they started. And just noticing how you can rub off on others. And I noticed people that I didn't really like, neither did my friends. And it was kind of because I just kind of rubbed off on them. So you have to be careful and notice how people are influencing you, because it's toxic if people are doing it negatively. And toxic friends will make you feel less than. I, like Cooper, I used to just see all the wrong things in everybody. And I thought I was like so perfect and I had everything together. And I would like point that out in people. I'd be like, you need to fix this and like you're doing this wrong. And I just kind of like put myself on this pedestal like above all my friends. And I just really made people probably feel pretty crappy about themselves. And like if someone's making you feel that way, they're not a good friend. And toxic friends will leave you empty-handed. I feel like we've all probably been around people where like once you hang out with them, you just feel drained afterwards. Like you feel like they like just keep taking from you, and you're just like investing so much time and energy into them, and you're not getting anything in return. And as Christ followers, like we love unconditionally. We don't do good things to get good things back. But in a friendship, like you shouldn't have someone constantly taking from you. It should be a give and take relationship. So I said all that to say this. If a friendship is leaving you just feeling anxious and just like drained and like you're not good enough, then it's a toxic friendship.
That's really good. Yeah, go ahead and give it up. That was a great response. And I love the last thing that you said about being empty-handed and everything. And in certain relationships, I think sometimes we're all guilty of this, using people as pawns almost, and pawns in our own little game where we can use somebody or be friends with somebody just because they might get us to that, closest to that person, or maybe they'll get us to that one thing that we want to do, or whatever it may look like, but not allowing it to be relationships that we engage in, and not allowing ourselves to engage in relationships where it's really just for what we can get out of it and not what we can give to it. And I love how Proverbs says that bad company corrupts what? Good character. And it's so crucial that we're surrounding ourselves with the right people. That was great. Let me unlock the phone real fast because I didn't put it in the unlock mode. Sam, my man Sam. In week 1, we talked a little bit about how people around us lift us up through life circumstances. Could you describe a moment for you in the past when some of your friends held you up and walked with you through a storm, or maybe a moment where you held your friend up and journeyed alongside them?
Yeah, absolutely. So really not all that long ago, I was kind of working through a season of doubt and questioning where God had called me to be, and if he had called me to be where I am, or if I missed it, or whatnot. And I was kind of battling through some illness while in the midst of that. And seasons of challenge or struggle don't all look the same. So just know, like, if you're not going through something that's very prominent, like, and talked about, say, alcohol or drugs or thoughts of impurity or whatever, it doesn't mean that you don't need help and that you can't go to somebody to ask for help. Because going through doubts and struggles, if you don't reach out to somebody, they can eat you up inside and really cause you a lot of damage. You may get out of the season that God actually called you into because you don't know that you're supposed to be there. But really, I had a few of my really good friends, some of my best friends. Actually, one of them is my girlfriend. Really came alongside me in faith to pray for me for healing, to encourage me, to lift me up, and really just reassure me and point me back to Jesus and to Scripture that God has appointed me and purposed me, and you, in whatever season you're in, God has appointed you, and He has assigned you. So don't, just because you may be going through doubts and you haven't heard from God in a while, don't leave the season that you're in. Press in, stay there, and He will reveal Himself to you in time, and you will see the fruit of your faith and what you've been believing for. And so really, friends are so important, especially when you're going through tough times.
Yeah, that's really good, man. I think for all of us, we could say the same thing. You know, there have been seasons for us. Maybe for some of us, we're in that season right now where we're like, man, I don't really know what to do. You know, I think sometimes the best posture to hold is just letting other people hold up our arms. Just like we were talking about at the beginning of the series when Moses, he was holding the staff, but his arms were getting heavy, you know, and he had people around him that were holding his arms up so that the army of Israel will continue to prevail. And I think that for a lot of us, this is just the same posture that we need to hold, where we're not trying to hold it all on our own. We're not trying to keep it all together. But honestly, like, regardless of what it is, whether we feel like it's significant or seemingly insignificant, allowing the people around us to hold our arms up as we continue to fight the battles of life and fighting them with people alongside us that care about us. So that was great, man. And I'm going to, again, unlock this because I didn't put it in the proper setting. Great. Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate that. I can always get a good laugh out of Ryan. Kate, in week 2, we talked about unrealistic expectations. Could you identify a moment in your life where maybe you were putting an unrealistic expectation on a friend, or maybe vice versa, someone was putting that on you, and how that affected you?
Sure. Okay, so this is my perspective. When I started thinking about unrealistic expectations, they kind of fall into 3 categories for me. First is unrealistic expectations with friends, so in a friendship. First off, friendships are so valuable and so important, but they are not the end-all be-all. They cannot be a place for you to just dump your problems, your worries, your doubts, and vice versa. It can't be a place, like Mackenzie was talking about, for someone to do that to you. It's just, that's not what it's for. And I just wanted to say with that also, we go to God first and learn what He says about us first, what His truths are first. And when you can let go of pretty much any expectations in a friendship, we can lower our chances of disappointment, because that's really what we're setting ourselves up for when we have any sort of high expectations, right? And then secondly, so from my perspective, a partnership, a relationship, Kyle, marriage, so it could be a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship, dating relationship, marriage relationship, whatever that is. As humans, we create stories and narratives in our head where we think that other people just know what's happening. We do it with our parents, we do it with our friends, we do it with anybody you could possibly do that with. But when you're in a marriage relationship and that's happening, you live with this person. You can't clock out at the end of the day and be like, whew, they just don't get it. No, you wake up the next morning and you're staring them in the face and you are creating this story in your head. And little things like, I just expect you to do, I do this, so I expect you to do this also, right? It turns into, you never do this. It turns into, you're obviously not putting into this relationship as much as I am. It happens fast, and it happens really quick, and it can be something as simple as the laundry or putting your shoes away, or I value sitting at the dinner table for dinner and you never want to do it, so XYZ, that means that you don't love me. You know what I mean? This is not that we, no, these are, no. So I say this, I'm saying all this because meanwhile, I have not spoken one word of this to anybody else. I'm holding all of these things. I'm having this whole narrative inside of my head and never once speaking a word to the other person of my expectations. How can I, in this instance, expect anyone to behave a specific way if I've never even asked them or told them what I want from them or what I need from them? It sounds so silly when you put it out in there, if you deduce it all the way down to that. How would you even expect someone to do what you want them to do if you've never even told them? It's not fair. So all that to say, come to find out, my partner is not the issue, I am, okay? And did I come to that conclusion myself? No, okay? It took a whole lot of counseling. Yeah, it took a whole lot of counseling and a lot of prayer for me to find out that I was holding this person up to a standard that, number one, was never attainable, and it was completely unfair to that other person. It's not fair to do that to other people. You're setting yourself up for resentment towards that person because it happens quickly. Not only can you set yourself up for disappointment, but when you're expecting a behavior from another person and it doesn't happen, you're just going to start resenting that person because they're not doing what you want them to do, right? So the third category that from my perspective, is unrealistic expectations with myself. And I'm going to be really honest, I still struggle with this every day. I really do. And it's really tough for me, but I want everyone else to have all the feelings. You're allowed to have all the feelings. You're allowed to have all the grace. You're allowed to do, everything. Feel your feelings. But I have a really hard time admitting that I need help, admitting that I'm failing, or that I am not meeting my expectations. But I'm also very open with the fact that I'm a work in progress, and I always will be. So the one truth, and I don't want to mess this up, so I'm going to read it off again, sorry. The one truth I can continue to fall back on, though, is that I know I can't do this alone, and I shouldn't be expected to. It's not me having the strength to get through adversity I'm met with. I can't do this alone, and I shouldn't be, I'm sorry, sorry. It's not me having the strength to get through adversity I'm met with. It's all God working through me. Some days are easier to walk in that than others, because you can tell yourself that. There's some days that I'm like, you gotta fake it till you make it. Just smile, because I'm not feeling it, but I'm gonna keep telling myself that, right? All I can say is I know I have a long way to go, but thank God I am not anywhere near where I used to be. Amen. Right?
That was really good. Thank you for being transparent. I really appreciate that. I unlocked it. Kyle, so in week 3 we talked a little bit about, and Tim actually talked about fixing broken relationships. So could you talk briefly about maybe a relationship that you had that needed fixing and how you navigated through that?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, sorry, I'm just kind of having a moment right now. If you can't tell, Kate's like the stable one that has her emotions in check. I'm the one that's like a hot mess. And if, man, it's just, it's a testament before I even get into the broken friendships, just us. I'm having a moment that us being up here talking about relationships and talking about having godly relationships. You know, if anything, just this moment right here is evidence that God is doing a work in you. God is not done with you. What the enemy comes to steal, you know, we shouldn't be up here talking to you guys about nothing, especially relationships. So, speaking of broken relationships, okay, I'm good. Sometimes, and this is, I'm gonna get into more friendships for a second, and then I'll get, you know, back into how God plans to restore and what the enemy steals. God is not just going to give you what you had, he's gonna give you more than you could have ever asked for. And in this moment, when it comes to friendships, just real talk, you know, I go big brother really quick because I'm protective over all of you, right? So when I say I love you guys, I know some of you barely know my name, but I genuinely do. And when I'm telling you that sometimes you need to cut off relationships, I mean that in a positive way. You know, the blocking of someone's cell phone number has kind of become cliche, but real talk, it is necessary, okay? Because you hear toxic relationships, and Mackenzie said it better than I ever could, so I'm not gonna repeat what she said, but just know that she's telling the truth. And sometimes when you need to block a number or block a relationship, and when I say guard your heart, I mean blocking, giving someone impact on your heart, letting somebody affect you emotionally, right? Sometimes you have to cut it off because God knows what he's doing, and there's gonna be a certain season that you just have to cut that person off. You have to just forget about them. And I know sometimes it's tough when they're in your family, or sometimes it's tough when they're in your school or they're in your class, but you can still, even if they're sitting right next to you, by the grace of God, you cannot let them affect your heart, right? So when those relationships are broken, sometimes it's divine intervention when a relationship is broken, right? Sometimes someone's going off on you, saying, oh, whatever, swearing at you or calling you whatever names, and don't talk to me. Secretly in your head, you should be like, thank you, right? Thank you for saying it so I didn't have to. Because if they're just leeching off you, because that's what a toxic friend does, right? They just leech off of you. And someone might suck you dry, and before you even know it, you're a shell of yourself, right? So sometimes you need to break relationships. But the second side of that, right? After you've grown a little bit, and in your age, this is a very unique time, because I'm going to use a word that has a very negative connotation, but at your age, you need to be selfish. And what I mean by that is your selfishness needs to be between you and God. That needs to be the only relationship that truly should impact your life. And you can have friends, and I'm not saying you can't date, etc. If it's healthy, do it, right? I get it. But ultimately, you need to be selfish with your time and your affections and who you let into your heart, right? Because what God will do is there will be a time now, and just real talk, this is the season I'm in now. I had to cut people off, right? High school, I was pretty cool. Like I said, my best friend was my mom. I was driven snow as pure as can be, but then I went to college, and it was the opposite. And I went down the rabbit hole and was a hot mess and turned to alcohol and parties and all that stuff, and I did all that. So I had these friends that genuinely I loved. I played a sport, and I played soccer at Walsh University. They were my brothers. I love them. To this day, I have love in my heart for them. But the real talk piece is I had to cut them out for a minute, because I knew that I could not handle being in their sphere of influence without subjecting myself to some of the things I used to do, right? I didn't have the strength. I had to block him out of my life. But here's the good news. God will take you through a season. And God will put someone in your life that gives you strength. And someone, God will put someone in your life that is literally, Kate is literally the physical manifestation of God's love in my life. And until you can get to that point where you have the strength and you have the confidence in yourself that sometimes you have to get from someone else. Sometimes you don't have the strength and the confidence to do it on your own. Sometimes it takes someone else to speak that influence into your life, right? Until you go through that season where you have the strength to maybe get yourself back in that moment, and then you can go back and be the light to those that you were once friends with that you had to cut off for a minute, right? Because that's the season I'm in now. So it's a lot of my buddies that I partied with and kicked it with in college. They're still there, and they're still texting me, and they still want to go, hang out or whatever. And for a while, I couldn't. But now, through the grace of God, I really feel like I have the confidence to be a light in those rooms that I used to just be one of the guys in, right? I feel like I have the confidence, and they can see God's love in my heart through my actions and just my face. And Austin was preaching earlier. I try to be an example about the way I talk about my wife. When they're, some of them are throwing shade, talking smack. Oh, she didn't. Oh, she doesn't. And I'm just like, well, Kate literally hands me a lunch and gives me a kiss every day on my way to work and says, "Have a good day, honey," and hands me my coffee. Sometimes I feel like I'm on some sitcom, right? So I try to be a good example and speak some positivity into their marriages, even if they don't know it, because maybe they don't have, that equally yoked, godly marriage. But just to wrap things up, so sometimes you have to cut people off. Sometimes a broken relationship is broken on purpose. Okay, sometimes it's God working in that relationship. Cut them off for a little bit, because until you have the strength to go back and to be honest with yourself, right? Be honest with yourself and head back into relationship and be the light that God called you to be. It's just let God work through you, right? Get out of the way. Because if I would have tried to do it on my own, I probably would still be doing the things I was doing, right? But I had to move away and for a season let God fill me up, because I was empty. I had to let God fill me up, and then that comes with the confidence, and that's where you can really start to minister the way God called you to.
That's great. Yeah, go ahead and give it up. Just so we're all clear, too, Kyle's my big brother, so if anyone tries to mess with me, you're messing with him. Just saying. Just figured I'd throw that one out there. I know I'm not going to get messed with by any of you guys, but anybody watching online? Yeah, just so we're clear. But Brittany, this is the last question, and then we're actually out of time, so we're not going to get to the last one, but we're going to wrap it up with this last question here. Brittany, what advice would you give to the student who's torn between two worlds, and they have friends that are in church that are pursuing Christ, and they have friends that are not in church and are pursuing the things of the world?
So, it's amazing to see, we didn't rehearse this. No one knew who was going to say what. We knew who was going to answer what question, and to hear how God is working in all of our stories, and even what I'm about to share is very similar to what other people have already said. I got saved when I was 11. Yeah, thanks. Got saved. Thanks. God is good. But originally I'm from Las Vegas, Nevada, so I grew up in Vegas, and I was a tomboy growing up. So kindergarten, I grew up with the same kids throughout grade school, and because I was a tomboy and played freeze tag or tetherball and all those games, I usually hung out with guys. And so there was these 3 gay friends I had from, not gay, I said that weird, guy friends from kindergarten. And we all grew up together. And those are my boys. We did everything together. We always played games. We had all the classes together. We went to each other's birthday parties. And then when I got saved, they didn't. I wanted to serve God. They didn't. I wanted to go to church. They didn't. And then taking it a step further, they wanted to start in middle school. They wanted to start partying. I didn't. They wanted to start drinking. I didn't. They wanted to start doing drugs. I wouldn't. And then they started dealing. And so my youth pastor growing up always had this phrase called change your friends or change your friends. And the similar version here is like Josh Pancher comes up here, says it all the time. Mackenzie said it. Show me your 5 friends, I'll show you your future. And they both mean the same thing. The people that you hang out with, your squad, your clique, your crew, your homies, whatever you call them, they influence every part of your being. Your emotions, the way you act, the way you present yourself to others, where you're going in your life, everything that you do, your friends influence you more than we realize. And that's why we talk about community, because it influences your entire person. And so my boys, I had to get to a place where I had to literally separate myself from them. They didn't want to go follow God with me, so I had to go a different direction. And I'm trying not to cry. By our senior year in high school, it was 3 guys. Senior year of high school, one of them died of an overdose. Sorry. I was not supposed to do that. Sorry. Thanks. These are my boys. One of them died of an overdose our senior year of high school, and the other 2 are currently still serving their prison sentences for getting caught dealing cocaine. And it breaks my heart because I love them, but I know if I kept staying the path that they were going, I would be right there with them and not where I am now. So that's why we're up here talking about community with you guys, because you love friends and like you have worldly friends and you can still love them and care for them and love on them, but there's that separation when you can't be influenced by them. Just like Kyle was talking about his friends from college. He loves them, he cares for them, he wants to do everything he can to help them and bring them to Christ, but there's a part where you can't let them bring you down. Panch also talks about that up here all the time. It's easier for people to pull you down than to pull them up. And so when you guys are selecting the people that you hang out with, your crew, your friends, realize that. Because my life could have been completely different if I kept hanging out with the boys I was hanging out with. And then I started hanging out with my friends in my youth group, my church friends, and we're still best friends to this day. They fly out here all the time and see me. I go back home and see them. When I'm struggling, when I'm going through something, I know I can hit them up in a quick second. And those are people that you want to surround yourself with, that because the people you hang out with will affect the trajectory of where you go. So wherever you want to go in life, so right now I'm dressed in this because I just came from work, I'm a lawyer. But if I were to hang out, so now, you both did it at the same time.
We did it at the same time?
Oh my gosh. Oh, praise the Lord. But I'm a lawyer now, and so like I'm a prosecutor, so like the things that my boys were doing are like the type of stuff that I put people away for. And so just the side note of that, we grew up in the same neighborhood, same school district, but 2 completely different stories because I decided to serve God and go one direction and they went the other. So when you guys are picking who you want to hang out with, your friends, the ones that you're like, oh, that's my bestie, or like, we're super close, think about that. Is this a person I see myself doing life with long term? Is this someone that's going to encourage me, that's going to support me, that's going to be there for me through thick and thin? And the answer is no, then you need to find new friends to hang out with. This wonderful room of like however many people are here, there's plenty of people here that you can find that will love on you, who love God, and like will lead a life of holiness with you without you feeling like you have to compromise just to hang out with people. And that's it.
Yeah, go ahead. You can give it up for that. Can we give it up for all these guys and everything they shared? Yeah, you can stand up. It requires a lot to be transparent like this. And I really believe that everyone in this room got something out of this. I know I did. I'm walking away with stuff that honestly like really impacted my life. So thank you guys so much for being transparent. Thank you for allowing your tears to be shed.